Do you attend an annual business or industry event? Why not suggest me as a speaker to the organisers? Just send them a link to pennyhaslam.co.uk and I can speak at virtual events or in person.
Hi, this time on the Penny Haslam podcast. Wow, you could have done this differently and you could have asked, no, I didn't want it for that. The challenge that we've got is that feedback can often be personal, it can be cutting and can steal our confidence if you choose to let it. So what I'm going to talk about today is asking for feedback, specifically asking for feedback, not giving feedback, not receiving feedback, but how you might go about asking for feedback. Who from? What do you want? And what are you going to do with it? So we've got 3 top tips on all of that. And then if you want to, you can give me some feedback on how to ask for feedback. Now, as we all know, feedback in the workplace can be a minefield. This idea, that you should be able to give feedback excellently and receive feedback excellently is, well, it's good on paper, but in practice it can go a bit awry. And one of my early experiences of getting feedback at the BBC is an exemplar of just how wrong it can go. So when I had first started on television, I knew I was okay at my job, but I really wanted to improve. And I think that's the case for many of us in our careers. We know that we're doing an all right job, but we don't just want to be good, we want to be great, don't we? And so we perhaps seek feedback out to find out how we could go about that. I also think that I wanted reassurance that I was doing an okay job because I hadn't actually had any feedback or suggestion that I was okay. The only reason I knew that I was okay at my job was because I hadn't been sacked. And that wasn't really good enough. So I went up to the obvious candidate, the editor of the programme that I was on a regular basis, because he'd know, right? He'd be able to give me some tips. He'd seen a million presenters improve and develop over their careers. Surely he'd have some instant answers for me. So I bravely plucked up the courage to go to his office and ask him for a couple of minutes of his time. At which point I said, I'm on telly all the time now. I'd really like to know how I'm doing and see if there's any ideas of what I could do to improve how I read the auto cue and how I do my thing. And he looked me up and down and he said, well, I don't know. I don't know if you're a bimbo who just reads out the auto cue or whether you actually know what you're doing. Now, that was quite a hurtful, nasty, terrible thing to have said to anyone because it didn't answer my question. And it just went to a personal sort of dig, really, at my gender and my hair colour, maybe, as well, and what he did or did not know about me. I thought it was completely belittling and was certainly one of those micro moments of sexism that is many of the strong sort of micro moments, the headwinds that women face in the workplace, where they are pigeonholed, boxed off, belittled, and, to be... I mean, he could have asked me, I don't know, do you just read the auto cue? Are you actually a business journalist? And I would have gone, I'm actually a business journalist. Actually, I've presented 2 panoramas, investigative documentaries. And he was rude and he made it a really nasty moment. And so, not that I want to do therapy from the newsletter. But yes, it was incredibly demeaning and diminishing of me, for me. So I walked into that not knowing or expecting that I would get feedback like that. What I should have done perhaps was after I'd been to HR and reported him for being a had I not been knocked off my perch so dramatically, I could have picked myself up and thought about asking a pool of people, a range of people, maybe 3 or 5 people, maybe a viewer, maybe a friend, maybe my mum, although she'd just talk about what blouse I had on that day. Maybe another presenter, and ask them to critically analyse or look at specifically what I could do and to help me. So, idea 1 for you. Number 1, think about why you want feedback? What do you want the information to help you with? What do you want to hear? Is it practical guidance? Is it some ideas that you may want to play with or use? And that's not just for your own presentation skills, but it might be some ideas about who you could have a coffee with or who you could go and have a meeting with to maybe further your career or find out about how another bit of the organisation works. So I've sought feedback in the past when actually I've been looking for reassurance. How did it go? Was I all right? And I just want someone to say, yeah, you were really good, darling. No worries. And to pat me down and make me feel better. But actually what I've got is, wow, you could have done this differently and you could have asked. Like, no, I didn't want it for that. So thinking about why you want the feedback in the first place. Secondly, consider who you're asking. Now, if you have an obvious candidate in mind who is maybe your boss or a senior colleague, and you think, yeah, they're going to know, it may be that they don't. And it may be that they disappoint you when they give you the feedback. Or it's not as fully rounded as you'd hoped it would be. So consider the person, but also consider the people you might ask. So they might just be one of 5 people that you ask for feedback from over a certain amount of time. There might be one of 2 people who might give contrasting ideas and feedback for you. And thirdly, make sure you ask for the feedback at an appropriate time and make it specific. So ask for something specific and make sure that person has been asked to consider what they're going to say with enough notice. You're not asking them out of nowhere. And finally, if the feedback that you've heard, the data that you've gathered, the information that you've sought, hasn't given you anything useful or anything that you needed to hear, then maybe you need to express it in a different way, make a different request to a different type of person. And ultimately, it may be a load of garbage. You don't need to like feedback and you don't need to use feedback. It is just information. What you do with that information is up to you. The challenge that we've got is that feedback can often be personal, it can be cutting, and can steal our confidence if you choose to let it.
Thanks for listening. Does your organisation communicate with confidence? My business, Bit Famous, can help you share your ideas, your message and purpose, and do it brilliantly. Find out how we can help by going to bitfamous.co.uk.